Thank you for joining me today. I'm Nick Essner with Cygnus. Let's get today's webinar started. The title of our webinar is How to Protect Your Career and Your Company During a Cyber Incident. So what we are going to discuss today is first the evolving CISO environment. What has changed recently, specifically with number two, the new regulations bringing new challenges. So we'll touch onto that a bit. And then very importantly is then how do we build a defensible CISO operating framework to address these new challenges? And then along with proactive strategies to demonstrate leadership and those next steps that you can take right now. So just a quick introduction of myself. As I said, I'm Nick Essner. I live in Denver, Colorado. At Cygnus, I'm head of cyber solutions. I come to Cygnus with 15 years of incident response and crisis management experience. Previously, I led the incident response crisis management team at Accenture Security. And then before that, I was at Mandiant. So I've taken a lot of those lessons learned from the front lines, from those trenches of what works and what doesn't work, and building proactive capabilities in the Cygnus platform for our customers. So just a real quick introduction about Cygnus. So Cygnus is a secure, purpose-built, out-of-band response and communications platform. We are a SaaS platform, so we are isolated from your environment, not domain joined or tied to Active Directory. So Cygnus brings together the incident response team, crisis management, GRC, business teams with legal, general counsel, your outside IR firm, and brings everyone together into a platform to execute a response and remediation and provide those out-of-band communications to respond and recover from an incident. The company was started in 2020, and today we have over 1,700 customers on the platform. And with this, we have 12 net new incidents being run in the platform every week, from things as simple as business email compromise, ransomware, filing an 8K SEC report, all within the Cygnus platform. The two primary use cases that customers leverage Cygnus is one is that potential compromise communication. If a threat actor has your credentials, ransomware group has compromised your domain, aka Scatter Spider, meaning they're monitoring their victims' communications. They then pivot to Cygnus to execute their response securely. The second major use case customers use with Cygnus is any sort of privacy matter. So if there's data exposure, data exfiltration, insider threat investigation, where such that legal needs to be involved to bring in and establish and maintain attorney-client privilege. Let's jump into the material. So specifically, starting with the evolving CISO environment. From this perspective, working with 1,700 organizations, we're helping a lot of CISOs address these challenges. And with these, several headwinds that are facing CISOs today, it's just not the evolving attacks with evolving ransomware tactics that keep us up at night. It's the addition of the inherent supply chain risk that they now have to manage. Let's add on top of AI capabilities, not just from a threat actor risk perspective, but also how to best effectively leverage AI for defensive operations. We'll discuss cyber regulations, but there's also an element around the concern of personal liability. Specifically, as we all are very familiar with in the news, Joe Sullivan from Uber, Tim Brown from SolarWinds receiving that Wells notice from the SEC. So what happened there was from their actions in relationship to the breaches that occurred at their organizations when they were employed there, CISOs are realizing that they can be held personally liable for improperly handling of cyber incidents. So the magnitude of these challenges places demand on that, what I call that critical decision making with cyber accountability. That is the spotlight is now on the CISOs based upon the spotlight on their performance throughout the incident response process. And I think this quote from Paul Furtado at Gartner kind of summarizes it pretty well, is that we're at a point in time where no one's being fired for having a cyber attack, but however, many are being dismissed or challenged based upon how they respond to it. And we're really going to take that apart and take that quote and elaborate on some of the frameworks and best practices that we could implement today. Because cybersecurity is no longer operating in a silo. It's not an IT problem. It's now a business problem, because these cyber events are pivoting outside of the SOC walls, so to speak, and impacting business operations, impacting customer information, customer data, and the performance of the company. We all know the regulatory challenges that are coming into play, and whether it's with SEC, CISA, New York DFS, NIS2 directives, regulations have now placed CISOs in a more predominant role as it relates to that decision-making process during an incident, with pressure to deliver timely, to be able to respond quickly, to be able to provide accurate information to support those critical business decisions when responding to these critical cyber attacks. Specifically, SEC cyber disclosure rules have increased that visibility and that ultimately responsibility on the security teams and the CISO. We're seeing this it comes from extra pressure with like fiduciary responsibility from the board. It comes down to demonstrate that you, CISO, made the right decisions at the right time during the incident response. The aftermath of a cyber incident has become it's that critical test that's now that's being on the spotlight, that's being examined, with the ability to manage the crisis and adhere to all these various different reporting requirements in a timely fashion. Now, as we're going through this, it's just not the CISO's responsibility. It is multiple folks' responsibility, and we'll get into that. The CISO is now in the driver's seat driving this, because a lot of this is stemming from now a cyber event. During a response, it's stressful enough with the pressure, dealing with containment, eradication of the threat. The business wants to recover and bring systems back online, maybe before we have recovery, before we have containment eradication. And so there's this balance of managing the incident, making critical decisions based upon what the investigation is showing, what outside counsel is advising, and what the business stakeholders are saying. And so walking this delicate, this angle here, we have to be able to demonstrate that we have taken the right actions and we have documented our actions ultimately from a auditing purpose. Last point I want to make on this is that materiality impact. So what we've seen here obviously is now with SEC, CISOs are found themselves as part of that materiality impact decision from cyber events. So this adds more complexity, more pressure, that now the security team is working with the business stakeholders. So obviously, along with the CFO, general counsel, outside counsel, GRC teams. And so this requires a new process, a new communications to be able to facilitate this while you're responding to a crisis, when the environment may be compromised and systems are down and you don't have the information available to make that any timely decisions, let alone timely disclosure decisions at the same time. This leads to building a defensible framework. And what I mean about this is, in incident response process, actions, those decisions, along with what was known when, is now audible. And we need to come to accept that going forward. And so this delicate balance that we need to ensure that we did take those right actions at each step, and those actions are defensible. And at a minimum, we need to be able to do basically three things. One, capture what I call those battlefield decisions. So which is making those decisions without the complete context or without complete information, especially within the first hours of the response. Two is with this auditability we need the ability to contemporaneously document for reporting and compliance each step of the incident during the incident with that proper chain of custody control, because these audits, this regulatory scrutiny is coming back months after the incident. And the fact that the CISO may be gone, the incident response lead may be gone, general counsel may not be working here in 12, 24 months when a audit may come. So who did what and when is even more critical post-incident. The third from a defensibility framework is going back to your incident response plan. And now, as our response is going to be audited, our response plan is also going to be under scrutiny. So we need to be able to, very simple, does our IRP plan include those right roles outside of the security team? As I mentioned, GRC, legal, risk, the CFO, for example. And has the plan been updated with those right processes to actually engage and facilitate those parties, these new stakeholders, regarding those decisions that we have to make in a timely manner where our traditional comms could be down, email is potentially compromised. How do we do this? And then third element of the incident response plan is new reporting processes. So obviously security has a new role in that as it relates to those different regulatory compliance reporting processes. They are feeding that information in. So that process needs to be well defined in the incident response plan. Leadership in a crisis. What are the top things to start doing today? From this perspective, we developed a list of 6 items that we all can take now to start implementing to build that defensible framework for response for your organization. And so the very first thing is what we're seeing is CISOs are telling us that they're building new cross-functional relationships with other teams outside of IT and security. So that's with as I mentioned, GRC, general counsel, the CFO, and understanding that goes into number 2 is as these parties come together to be able to make that cyber disclosure process for a cyber event is having a playbook for cyber. And that the CISO is probably going to be initiating or kicking that off based upon the event. Number 3, as we mentioned, again, we need to proactively update our incident response plan to include these different roles, these different workflows, escalation, trigger points, especially when it comes to time. Obviously, in an incident response plan, what we're seeing is general counsel now wants to be brought in early to a lot of these matters during the initial triage. So we need to reflect that in our incident response plan. And then additionally, how do we then take this even further, and how do we do this if we don't have communication channels available, if Teams is down, Zoom is unavailable? What are these protocols for engaging and collaborating and bringing these folks together? And additionally, from response plan is what are those checklists now from a due diligence that security is now responsible from a compliance perspective? Number 4 here is a new step, actually, is with SEC and board involvement, and there's an element of education. And so we're seeing that CISOs now are having the opportunity to have a seat at the table at the boardroom and to be able to use that as an advantage point to be able to articulate the CISO's needs from the organization to support them. Number 5, no surprise to anyone, is we have to test and exercise this. And what we're seeing, specifically why I want to call this out, is we're seeing started in 2023 is that tabletop exercises are now involving board members. That I had not seen this prior to 2023, but this is very interesting and a very needed element of the expectation that the board knows that there's an expectation, but they don't know what it is. And if it's being driven from the CISO organization, there needs to be some training and awareness and practice and simulation to go through this, and especially then testing those disclosure playbooks. And the last thing I'll call out here is, again, continuously document. This is the hardest thing to do, as in when the house is on fire, we need a scribe. We need to be able to capture what we know when and what decisions are being made. Our OneDrive may be unavailable. OneNote may be unavailable. We need to be able to capture in real time. It's just not the security team, but it's also what are the other business units, other business teams supporting the response, the recovery, and to be able to capture that in a meaningful way, because this is all about those regulatory triggers. And having SEC 96 hours or throwing a variable of a supply chain with a vendor, your time windows come down quite short, and we don't want to be going back and doing this post incident. In conclusion, here, a statement on the CISO leadership is we're emphasizing adopting this proactive, structured approach that CISOs are in the driver's seat, where they can demonstrate their preparedness, they can demonstrate the team's performance, the actions, the decisions that they made when, all in order to create a defensibility of the response to the incident. Because again, going back to SolarWinds or Uber as an example, going back years in time is not the best moment to remember what happened when. I just want to articulate a couple elements from a use case perspective that Cygnus solves many of these challenges. And beginning with again, the use case is, potential compromised comms, threat actor in the environment, scattered spider, potential domain compromise. We need to pivot out of bands and be able to collaborate and mobilize and bring together those different business units, business teams, and third parties, your third party provider. So again, general counsel, your outside counsel, your maybe a public relations firm, your IR forensics firm, and to be able to mobilize and respond in a secure manner that's isolated from the impact. And then to be able to start executing those response playbooks and be able to have that basically on mobile, on your phone, be able to execute this from the airport or from the beach, hopefully not during any crisis. And then be able to demonstrate that compliance. As I mentioned, this is incident response is turning into an audible compliance event. And to be able to have that command and control of the narrative, of the evidence, of the decisions, what was made when, and the impact that it has, and to be able to report on that. And those are the key use cases that Cygnus brings to our customers when responding to these different matters. But holistically, if we just take a step back and look at how this all comes together, again, the very simple life cycle mantra of from preparation, incident response plans, to be able to have that not as a PDF on your SharePoint or OneDrive, but to have it living, breathing, dynamic, accessible on mobile. Being able to do these simulation exercises, as we mentioned, board member involvement on crisis response simulation exercises, bringing it together into the platform that they will actually be responding on. From a reporting perspective is interesting enough. So we had a Fortune 500 company running through earlier this year, utilize Cygnus for filing their 8K. So collaborating and bring those stakeholders together into Cygnus with those third parties to collaborate and respond securely in that time. Specifically, with very importantly, is how do we protect this and maintain privilege out of bands for that protection. That concludes the presentation today. We have a lot of additional resources, white papers, data sheets, on our website that you could visit cygnus.com and also schedule a demo where we're happy to take you into the platform to see how this works and get you into the platform working with your organization. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and I'm happy to answer any questions